Everybody. Thank you for joining us on this first kind of wintry cold day here in Denver. I'm Griffen O'Shaughnessy, the founder and CEO of Canopy Advisory Group. At Canopy, we have reimagined the traditional pathway to success. We've spent the last decade building an innovative workforce where organizations benefit from trusted, reliable experts doing what they do best. And part of this vision includes connecting our broader community with incredible experts like Chelle Johnson, our guest this morning. We're so excited to have Chelle host Canopy's webinar today. She is a talent acquisition and human resources expert whose career has spanned 20 plus years and 3 continents. Throughout her career, she has recruited, launched, and advanced thousands of professionals at Comcast, Lockheed Martin, and Honeywell, just to name a few. Chelle is going to talk with us today about trends in the labor market and help guide us all in adapting to a constantly changing world. Preparation for this webinar, Chelle even connected with top economists in Colorado to gather data. So we're so excited to learn more. We'd love for this to be an interactive conversation, so please feel free to ask questions live at any point, or you can throw them in the chat as well, and Serena and I will monitor that and voice your questions for you. So with that, I just want to welcome Chelle and say we're so honored to have you here this morning. And with that, I'll let you take it away. Thanks, Chelle.
Griffen, thank you so much. And hello, everyone. I see some familiar faces. Hi, Bijal. Good to see you. Hi, Eliza. And as Griffen stated, I love having people live. So if you can put your video camera on, that's going to definitely help, because as a speaker, we do not like to look at black boxes. All right, so welcome. Hi, Ellie. Hi, Courtney. Thanks for putting yourself on. Hi, Marianne. It's so nice to see you. Okay, well, this morning I woke up and my phone was going crazy with articles about the BBC just announced the bosses who silently nudge out workers. And then we have Andrew Hudson, who you might be familiar with, Andrew Hudson's job list. He just put out a new article, which includes information that Guild Education, another Denver-based company and a unicorn. The first line reads, "There's been an oversaturation of stories about the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, mental health in the workplace." And into this article, or into today's presentation, I have read articles from Fast Company, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, the Society of Human Resource Management, and Colorado Inclusive Economy. And my head has just been going like this. So that oversaturation is definitely something that I've been feeling. How about you? How many of you have been feeling just oversaturated with this information?
And Chelle, just this morning, the DBJ's like morning journal has a whole article about quitting too. Many new hires are taking employers for a test drive and walking away. I was like,
test drive. Exactly. So no matter where you look, and there's even in Colorado with Andrew Hudson and the DBJ and as many groups talking about this subject. I'm honored today to talk to you about our labor market trends. And so how many of you feel like you've been on a roller coaster the past 2 years? Do I stay with my job? Do I join the gig economy? How do I promote diversity, equity, and inclusion? My own mental health isn't where it used to be because I don't have that true connection. All of these topics are coming up. And so whether you feel like you've been on a roller coaster or feel like you've been on a bull ride at the rodeo or on a bull at your favorite Western bar, right? This is what our labor market has looked like. So today's discussion, we're going to talk about what are the trends? And my hope is that they're not just trends, but a systemic change in how the workforce treats its employees and how employees speak up for their true needs. We're going to talk about how do you source innovatively from a recruitment and a talent acquisition standpoint. We're going to talk about DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. within organizations, but also how we can be better advocates for our diverse and BIPOC friends and coworkers. And then we're going to talk about what is the latest in mental health programs. And then everybody's talking about, are we headed into a recession? So I hope that that will meet your needs as we go. So let's jump into it. There are so many workforce stats out there. And when I'm talking about workforce stats, I want to make sure that I have the right information. So I reached out to the head of the economic development and talked with the Colorado Workforce Council and did a lot of research into this. But then I also looked at SHRM. And so you can read what's going on. 4 million Americans are quitting their jobs each month. And in August, there were 4.2 million that left. Now, this isn't a new trend. This is really when it started in 2021, an average again of 4 million, and then 4.5 million people in November. Over 47 million people left their jobs. And in 2022, this year, 40% of employees have thought about leaving their jobs. Now, as a career coach and an executive recruiter, I'm talking with people every single day about why are they quitting. And so let's jump into some of those statistics. When I looked at this, and Andrew Hudson's most recent article that came out today talks about, is mirroring what this is talking about. The major reason people are leaving is due to low pay and lack of advancement opportunities. Now, if you look at what Guild Education and Andrew just came up with, lack of opportunities and pay were like right equal. And so also people feel disrespected. They feel stressed out, overwhelmed, burnt out, etc., which is why mental health is not a stigma anymore. And we're going to talk about that. So how many of you as consultants or as actual people who have left corporate or people that have looked at future have had some of these reasons why you've quit? I mean, I know one of you for sure who's been in my community have had these things. So how many of you can relate to why we're quitting? What you're hearing from your clients, what you're seeing from your organizations as consultants, right? Some other things that were really interesting is that I've had the opportunity to do a lot of speaking, especially for women organizations, the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce, New Jersey Conference for Women, and Silicon Valley Women's Conference. 63% of the jobs that were lost between February of 20 were held by women. And there's been a big conversation about, are women coming back? They're not coming back at the rate that our male counterparts are. And there's 2.2 million less women in the workforce. Now, this is due to childcare. It's due to low pay. It's due to too few hours of work. So in just these first 2 slides, we can do an hour presentation on the whys behind all of this and the root causes behind all of this. But we only have a half an hour today. So I wanted to bring you a big picture of what is going on. Now, 60 to 80% of most of our companies are spending money on people. Yet people are leaving, and you just saw the reason that they're quitting. The average cost to replace an employee is 2 times their salary, right? And 32% of US employees said that they have already quit a job because of strict in-office requirements. Part of what I do as a consultant is that I recruit frontline people. And as I've been interviewing lots of nurses and customer success reps, a lot of them are like, unless it's remote or hybrid, I don't even want to look at it. How many of you can relate to that as well, as either looking for consultant work or being an employer and having people who don't want to respond, or people who don't want to go back to an on-site position? I see some heads. Yes, and you can put anything on your thoughts about this in the chat. We really do love engagement. Now, we said that we were going to talk also about the Equity Act, the Equity Pay Act that was launched in January a couple of years ago in Colorado. There's now 17 states that are following Colorado's plan about this. And pay transparency is becoming more popular. Now, if I'm talking to recruiters, which I have a huge network of, some recruiters love it, but others hate it because candidates think that, oh, if I don't make X number of dollars, I can't get in. These are just ranges that they're getting. So don't let the pay range stop you or anyone you know from applying to a job that they actually love. Now, and as we are going into a potential recession, recessions typically last about 15 to 20, or I'm sorry, 12 to 15 months. So I just wanted to provide you a high level of what's going on in the workforce with statistics, what it costs to replace employees, and why employees are leaving their jobs. Now, when I spoke with and watched presentations from the Colorado Workforce Council, from a Colorado perspective, the main areas that we as a state are focusing on are how do we navigate career development and career advancement at a better pace, especially for BIPOC and women. How do we close the digital divide? How do we assure that unemployment rates stay low? And how do we increase post-secondary credential attainment? And you'll see companies like Guild or 2U popping up. And so we're going to get into some of that. The first focus area that is for sustained action is career advancement and navigation. And if we go back to the earlier slide, this is really the area that if you are a consultant and you are talking to people about, you know that your CEOs and your C-suite want to hire the best people. And the cost of losing people is huge burden to the bottom line. So some of our Colorado-based universities like MSU are starting to build career navigation and career opportunities to reskill and next skill our workforce. At MSU Denver, for example, AMTAP, or the Advanced Manufacturing Talent Program, is aligned with Lockheed Martin to do that. Employers are partnering with our universities to bring better opportunities. MSU also has aviation that they're partnering with Frontier Airlines. We have General Assembly that is doing boot camps for people who want a new career in customer success, in UX engagement. And the top jobs for reskilling right now are in manufacturing, technology and coding, and AI, or artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So if you are looking to reskill, these are just some of the areas that are popping up. Closing the digital divide is a huge expense to not only Colorado, but bringing equitable opportunities for technology for underrepresented and minorities that may not have access to technology. Companies like Comcast and Dish are bringing affordable broadband, device access. My daughter goes to STEM in Highlands Ranch, free computers at school, computers at your local schools. Digital literacy is something that we can all think about and know about. And if we want remote and hybrid, obviously having that digital literacy is going to be very important. And this is really what Colorado as a state is focusing on. And I just had to throw this statistic in. Closing the educational gap between Black and Latinx children and their white counterpart, $2.3 trillion benefit to the US economy. This also aligns with post-secondary credential attainment, which is what Guild is doing, and why companies like Walmart and Lowe's and Raytheon are partnering with Guild to increase these opportunities. I could talk all day about what the Colorado Women's Chamber is doing, what our diversity chambers in Colorado are doing to really close the gap, to bring more women onto boards, to bring more women into entrepreneurial areas, and to bring our BIPOC counterparts into these areas as well. Job and wage growth is a huge focus for Colorado. In fact, we are currently at 115% above the national average for job growth. And again, that does come from the Colorado economy or audit and from the Colorado Workforce Council. We are increasing opportunities for executives of color, because if we talk about, this is a sustained, not just a trend, but having more opportunities for underrepresented LGBTQ, BIPOC is a huge area. Colorado right now is 61% Caucasian, 9% African American, and 24%. And if I got some of those numbers a bit wrong, but we are lower in our diversity and inclusion numbers. So Colorado Inclusive Economy, which I'm a part of this year, is really working to partner with companies to increase that wage gap, to just make companies aware of what's going on. And then obviously to increase apprenticeships that are available. The good news is for our Colorado women is that women lead about 30% of employers in the state. And that also goes for women entrepreneurs. We have the #1 ranking for women entrepreneurs in the country. So as consultants, as women, get out there and encourage your friends and your employers to really look at how they can increase opportunities for people of color and women. And there's also a dramatic increase. The city and county of Denver has focused $15 million of our marijuana money and taxes to focusing on more venture capital for women of color, because right now only 0.2% actually goes to that. So a lot of these statistics also come from my friends who are women of color or that have started. And a huge shout out to the Denver City and County of Denver. Lots of opportunities that our state is bringing to us. So let's look at employee engagement. And obviously employee engagement is a really important area when you look back at why people are quitting. And something you're going to hear from me throughout this time that we have is that building a community that is allowing for engagement and belonging and the right mental fitness is how you're going to keep your employees. But the first thing you have to do is you have to measure and survey your employees by using really credible surveys. And then my clients in my personal practice, what they want are genuine conversations with their leaders. And I know several of you are leadership coaches. This should be a huge area for you from a business to business perspective of bring survey findings with the clients you're working with. And leaders have been very data driven. They now can use this data to have authentic, behavioral based and skill based conversations with their employees so that business outcomes increase, but those soft skills of knowing your employees, providing clear ongoing communication, and focusing on the well-being. This is really what engagement is now about. It's knowing your employees from an authentic perspective. It's providing the right tools so that people feel that belonging and that community. I see some that we have.
Yeah, this is great. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. Bijal said she's finding more clients wanting the 360 reviews. And then also Deidre is asking, and I was thinking the same thing, do you have any suggested survey templates or questions you can share, or what survey platforms do you think are best for measurement?
You know, I looked at, I think Gartner has some good surveys. I think Gallup is well known for their surveys as well. You can look at the Society of Human Resource Management for the best employee engagement survey recommendations, but those two are, some of the Pricewaterhouse and E&Y and Accenture have been putting out large documents on employee engagement. And so those are 4 or 5 suggestions that I would have. And Bijal, thank you for saying that those surveys are really important. Now, if you do deploy a survey and then you don't do anything with the action plan, you're going to see people leave again, because that is a huge derailer and a huge area of demotivation of you're asking for our information, but then you're not doing anything with it. Right? Okay, awesome questions. And we're going to focus on some of these other areas. I talked a little bit about connection and community and belonging and fulfillment. These are the most common sentiments for our employees. And if you do have a remote workforce or hybrid workforce, this first bullet point here is you need to offer virtual training, which many of you as consultants or leadership development folks can provide advice to your companies, is to provide training that matches the depth and breadth of the employees that you have. There's lots and lots of platforms out there that offer this type of training. And then having that integrated recognition that's frequent, meaningful, not superficial level. And this is where mid-managers and leaders are the ones that are having the hardest time right now, because they're expected to know, to bring the results, to bring the outcomes, but then also pivot on how they are managing from a more soft skill and behavioral perspective. So there's a lot of leadership burnout that we're seeing. We're going to talk a little bit about career and professional development. And the point here is don't neglect your managers.
Yeah. And Chelle, to that point, in terms of recognition, can you give us some specific examples? Like, is it the celebrating anniversaries of, you've been here 5 years, and so we honor that commitment? Is it, what other types of, like, not necessarily awards, but recognition are you seeing that's meaningful to these mid-level managers and others?
The recognition that's meaningful is really getting to know your employees, caring about their families, understanding their hearts as well as their head, and not having superficial relationships, because employees, again, it goes back to, do they feel a sense of belonging? Do they feel part of a community? Do they feel that they are being fulfilled? And do their leaders know what fulfills them?
So the recognition is more of like a personal relationship as opposed to a broader, like, public recognition of your service and commitment to the company.
Yes. And I open it up to the audience. If you have other things for this recognition that you have found to be useful for your client.
Yeah, Bijal had a great comment. She said,
I thought she might.
Them. That's so perfect, right? How do you like to be recognized?
Exactly.
Great idea, because it could vary from person to person too.
Exactly. And that's part of the meaningful conversation, is don't assume that you know what they want. Ask them what they want. That goes back to the bullet point of knowing your employees and knowing their well-being, right? So Bijal, thank you for that comment. Any other thoughts on this from the audience?
Have you found, Chelle, that access to service projects and doing things as an organization that are outside of your business, but that create that same sense of community and giving back? So much is focused on individuals and what each person needs, but I think sometimes we lose sight of the giving aspect and how fulfilling that makes you and more well-rounded as a person. Do you find organizations doing more of that sort of community outreach as a team and team building?
Thank you so much for bringing that out. Yes, absolutely. In fact, Denver Day of Giving, or Colorado Day of Giving, I believe, is coming up in December. And that's a great way to recognize. There's so many nonprofits out there. I can give you example after example after example of where my clients or my personal career coaching executives have felt so much better just by going to Precious Child in Boulder. So yes, absolutely. I do think, and And companies that are switching up their benefits to allow for like 2 days of community service, or we're actually going to talk a little bit more about that. How are we doing on time?
I think we're pretty good. Well,
Okay.
we'll hustle if we need to at the end to get everybody out on time.
Okay, this is really where I can flex my muscle because I was the talent acquisition director at Comcast and Lockheed before. And this is an area that I currently work with Canopy with in finding the best. So how do you source for hard to fill positions? Leveraging the gig economy is huge. There are now 57 million people in the gig economy doing work like Griffen and I are doing, that are consultants, and even more than that have their own side gig. I was at a SHRM Speed Network, Society of Human Resource Speed Networking event last night, and one of the women who is a technical operator at NBC Universal, she has a side gig of a podcast. Or you've got, so lots of bullet points on here, but the more you network, and again, I do 1 to 2 hour long sessions on networking. That is why this type of group is so important. The more you can refer people to each other, to leverage your network, to look at what's going on and have meaningful conversations again with those that you're networking with, to understand what they want to do. That's really how you find the right people. Obviously, you need to post pay ranges and leverage salary and market survey trends. I can recommend many of them to you. I can also recommend amazing compensation consultants through Canopy. The next pieces are local and grassroots efforts. This perfect example here is we were having a conversation in Colorado inclusive economy, and one of my clients was trying to increase hiring underrepresented. And so I called someone in my network. She got the word out to the diversity chambers of commerce and to her network. And this client was able to hire 3 people very qualified that they never would have been in front of before. So you've got to think differently. How do you leverage your relationships with the universities? How do you hire workers over 50 that have so much more energy? And Second Act Women, again, here in Colorado, focus on just this type of thing. So tapping into the immigrant population, understanding how global sourcing and pipelining can come in, nearshoring, outshoring, offshoring. Again, this is my area of expertise, so you might be hearing a lot of different buzzwords here, but these are just 12 ideas on the past couple of slides. And partnerships with the chambers of commerce, especially diversity chambers of commerce, that is how you can source and hire great people. I'm sure there's lots of questions on this one, but this next slide really talks about agility. Companies who focus on sourcing and hiring in a non-data-driven way are not going to be at the forefront of hiring tomorrow's workforce, of hiring the best talent. So that out-of-the-box thinking and that analytical understanding of your market. And if you do want to have analytics, again, Gartner has a tool called Talent Neuron, Career Builder, LinkedIn, they all have tools that can help with that. And then going back to the equity pay, more people are talking about their salary. So Colorado was actually ahead of the curve in implementing the Equity Pay Act. And so including job salary postings is very, very important. There's a lot to take in, so I'm just going to pause there for a minute, and we have something in the chat.
I think
Sugar
it goes
wish.
back to the recognition piece, right?
Okay, great response sending a sugar wish. What's a sugar wish?
Sugar Wish allows you to choose, and Deidre, feel free to jump in, but you send somebody basically like an online coupon, and then they go to the Sugar Wish site and select. It was originally started as a candy company, I believe, and it's local Colorado company, and you could choose kind of what combination of candies you want. And now I think it's really expanded to have, you know, a huge sort of selection of different gift items.
Gotcha. There's a lot of companies out there like that, but this goes back to the recognition of actually writing a thank you card to your employees or to your clients and sending it to them rather than through email, because email is not as personalized. I just got a card from one of my passing clients that says, "You're a total badass." So think about how fun that would be to receive, right? What can you do that's personalized touch? So thank you for those things. Any other questions on the slides we just covered? Any surprises? Any new ideas for you guys?
One new idea I had that I just want your sort of gut reaction to is I was having a conversation with Case Button, who's on, I believe, on the Zoom this morning, and he talked a lot about workforce of I don't know if you call them ex-convicts, people that have come out of the prison system, right? What do you know about that, and what a huge workforce that is? And he was describing to me how oftentimes they have really entrepreneurial skills, and like what a great gift to be able to engage with them in a meaningful way and keep them out of the system by giving them meaningful work. Is that something that you think is plausible, I guess, for
Not only plausible, but I think
Yeah.
is absolutely doable. And shame on me for not having a bullet point on that. There's a
Yeah.
group called Honest Jobs here in Colorado, and their head of HR is a friend of mine. Absolutely, it's going to be a focus. A lot of people who were incarcerated for drug or marijuana type things, I'm not going to go into that, but the answer to your question is yes. They are very entrepreneurial, and yes, I do agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, outside of the box thinking, for sure.
Outside of the box thinking. Okay, this whole topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is one that's very true to my heart. Again, we could talk hours about this topic. The logos that I put here for you are groups, organizations that are really focusing on this for our state. Colorado Workforce Development Council is looking at how to increase equity, et cetera. Cape Inclusion, good friends of mine run that. Colorado Inclusive Economy, Interview IA, Joe Thurman and UB Simarini are really looking at how do we create true, unbiased interviewing opportunities. These are all Colorado-based companies. So again, this goes back to what sense of community do you have? And we're going to really talk about this and lean into this idea in our slides. A strong, cohesive corporate culture is important for leaders at all levels. And I know you can read this, but honesty, integrity, empathy, that goes back to recognition. It goes back to knowing the well-being of your employee. And it's really about that sense of community, especially after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. There's a lot of not just trends. My hope is that this is not just a trend, but it's a systemic change that is being demanded and that employers have to listen to. Okay, again, I only have 30 minutes. DEIB, lots we could talk about with that. Mental health in the workplace. 89% of employees reported experience burnout over the previous year. So if you're a consultant from a human resources perspective, know that your leaders are burnt out. Understand what your mental health providers can give you. Increase benefits that provide great mental health for them. What can employers do? Again, it goes back to the same trend that we've been seeing is talk to your employees, ask how they're doing. Provide training to your leaders on actually how to have a conversation about behavioral types of issues. Understand your community and have a plan. Know when and how to support this. Now, some of these logos that are popping up are the top companies for mental health that you can leverage for your clients. I put positive intelligence in here because positive intelligence is a program that many leaders and coaches are using. I'm personally a certified positive intelligence leader, and it creates more neuroscientific patterns from going from the inner critic to truly learning how to be mindful and increase and change how you approach things, not just from a negative perspective. So lots of things out there, lots of apps out there, from Calm to Deepak Chopra, that you can provide. But also understand that your clients, the top things from a mental health perspective are burnout and stress and anger. What are they angry about? They're not connecting. They're not getting recognition from their leaders about what they want. They're not getting the pay they deserve. They don't feel confident to have a voice. All of these things lead to depression, and there's lots and lots of new technology out there that can be done from a telehealth perspective. So I hope that what I tried to do here is a very quick manner is here are some companies that you can leverage, that Kaiser Permanente is leveraging, because there's such a demand for this. So I'm seeing some things in the chat.
Oh, Lorenzo had another great suggestion
Awesome.
of a program called Wages that facilitates reentry for people
Love
that
it.
have been, yeah. So I'm
Thank
excited.
you. Thank you. Again, that's why the connection here and the networking is so important. With all of the research that I did, we are saturated with this information. So my hope is to bring it to a more palatable and more actionable perspective for you. But Lorenzo, thank you so much for that.
Chelle, with the mental health in the workplace, is your data showing that when that type of resource is offered to employees, they're utilizing it? Or are they just like grateful that it's an option? Or are they actually like engaging with these resources and finding it to be really helpful?
Many people are engaging with this because the employer is starting to, again, going back to how to retain, having these meaningful conversations, asking the employee what they need, understanding, and that this is not just a trend, but that this is a major part of the employee benefits. So yes, they are leveraging it.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. How do you succeed in an economic downturn? Another piece where you're going to find so many articles and be oversaturated with documents. Really what it comes down to is the theme and the message that I've been delivering to you today is you have to have shared goals. There has to be a sense of commitment. Where are we going? How am I doing with those goals? That trust, that camaraderie, that sense of belonging, and that unity. If your clients have thriving cultures and that are resilient and agile and can pivot, that is what's going to keep people in an economic downturn. And you might be hearing me talk a little bit about softer things, emotional things, behavioral things, because with what we've gone through in the pandemic and through from a diversity lens and from lots of different lenses that we could all talk about, what people want in an economic downturn are these things, that commitment, the feedback, and that goes back to all of the topics that we've already talked about. Now, this impact of community and belonging, and Griffen, this goes back to your question as well, is when people feel heard, when they feel like they are engaged and that their boss or company cares about them, their burnout decreases, their job satisfaction increases, their experience through net promoter scores or employee net promoter scores increases, meaning leaders have higher employee engagement surveys. They stay with their company and they retain their employees. So I hope that in the downturn, I can tell you, I talk to a lot of people every single day, HR leaders, professionals, directors, and it goes back 40% are thinking about leaving. So as consultants, as people in the community, ask for what you want. Have the confidence to know that people are asking for increases in pay. Provide the right sense of consultancy or advice on mental health, on having conversations, and increasing the ability for leaders to talk about emotional and behavioral types of things. Bijou, I see you shaking your head. I can see others shaking their head with this. Ellie, thank you for smiling at that. You know, that it's my team has put together a free assessment. Awesome.
Thanks,
We can
Bijou,
ask
for
them
sharing
general
that.
conversations. That's awesome.
And what about being, you know, in such a virtual environment now for so many companies too? I imagine that that severely impacts the sense of belonging, right? The employees are grateful for the flexibility, but then there's so much less of the pop in your office to have those kind of genuine face-to-face conversations. So for, you know, the people that are with us this morning that run companies that have employees that they're trying to engage, and they're mostly virtual, what do you recommend in terms of a cadence for get-togethers, events, in-person communication that can create the sense of belonging even in a virtual environment?
Well, first of all, I don't think humans want to have meetings just to have meetings, or want to be, people are zoomed out, teamed out, etc. How many of you feel completely, right, talking heads? So the strategy has to be an integrated strategy. More companies are sending things to their home. They're providing ergonomic chairs, if you will, ergonomic tools for their employees. As far as the recognition for virtual, a lot of people do want to get back to the office. And I don't want to go on lots of different tangents, but it goes back to that integrated recognition, meaningful conversations, open door policy, and access to resources, because a lot of, like, let's say millennials, they want to do things on their own. They might not want. So understanding the style of your employees, of how much do they want, ask them. How much time do they need with you? How much can you give them? And we do have a lot of experts on the phone here. So if any of you have other recommendations to answer Griffin's question, please open up.
We have one client who invites, she's a manager that invites those that report to her front porch. And so she said she's had great with that. They hang out, they drink coffee on our front porch. Sometimes they walk together, and just those like front porch conversations, she said, feel really authentic. And she's found great engagement because it's a more, you know, sort of like a more laid back feel where you can be really open with each other.
I love that. I have clients whose teams like go walk together. They plan a hike. They do a baseball game now that things are open. People are definitely coming back to in-person events and networking. And so it's a mixture of those. I'd love to hear other ideas from other experts on the phone.
Bijou had a great point. She said 15-minute weekly touch point, not focused on tasks, but future focused, which is great. Great idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love that. What other ideas? Okay. And then
we have another question in the chat. How should employers think about whether to make serious investments and changes to create gender employment satisfaction versus utilizing a more project-based engagement model where perhaps the expectations and needs may be much less than an employee? So sort of how do employers think about going project-based versus hiring full-time?
Francis, this is a pretty, I'm just reading it again. So what I'm seeing here is the growth of the fractional or interim consultant, which is a lot of what we do, right? So to answer your question, I'm finding that middle market that don't want to have the benefits and the taxes, this is really where the market is flexing right now. And I don't know if utilizing a more project-based engagement model where perhaps the expected. This is where the networking comes in as well. I think the more people that know about fractional and interim opportunities, there's a lot of articles on this right now, and that's why 57 million people in the country are involved with this type of gig economy. As far as from like a proposal perspective, if you do come in and talk, you have to talk to the C-suite to get used to the idea at first, or you bring it in from the hiring managers of, I think, for example, I have a controller position right now with a Brighton-based company, and they just need someone until they find someone full-time. So how do you do that? Am I answering your question?
We found too that, some organizations have posted a role and not found the right candidate, right? They may be
Right.
looking for 3 months, 6 months. They've maybe even hired a recruiter and still can't find the right person. And in that kind of a situation, it's great to leverage someone that's more project-based, that can move the needle. And then maybe 3 or 6 months down the road, once those changes have been put into place by that project-based consultant, the right person will be attracted to the role, or the market will have shifted so that, now there are more, I guess, potential professionals that want to be employees to choose from. So we've seen that sort of model of utilizing the project-based when companies can't find the right employee.
Yeah, there's several companies out there that focus on fractional, and luckily Canopy is here to lean into that market, especially here in the Denver area. Griffen, you should talk about that, but that's a really good question. So that's as far as the slides I have. We went really quickly through a lot of those. My areas of expertise are talent development, leadership development, executive coaching. I'm getting a lot more into the DEIB arena, and I'd love to answer any questions that you might have, or just hear from you on any thoughts that we could incorporate into this topic of labor market trends.
Thanks, Chelle. And you're such a tremendous resource. If any of you are interested in engaging with Chelle to bring her into your organization, to work with your managers, to come up with creative ideas to continue to foster this sense of belonging. Something that really has hit me through this is, like you said, it's such a softer conversation, right? It's not like you have to do these 5 things. It's like you have to engage and connect with your people in really authentic ways. And that's something that we can all do that doesn't really cost very much other than time too. So I think it's a really, really incredible takeaway. Let's see, we've got a lot of people just saying thank you. Any other questions for Chelle or thoughts to just chat about as a group before we go our separate ways this morning? Case has a comment, posted some information. Case works for Slack, saying they've done a ton of research on the sense of belonging, comparing it to productivity. And essentially productivity and work life or quality of life go up in the hybrid and remote world, especially among underrepresented groups. But sense of belonging goes down. So maybe to the point of we can't have those chats where we pop in each other's office. So quarterly in-person team bonding and get-togethers seem to be one solution. Totally agree. Thanks, Case, for sharing that and your work with Slack. Any other comments or questions for Chelle this morning?
Case, I'd love to talk to you offline around this work. I do think that is very true. And I've talked with many underrepresented and BIPOC members about how to get that sense of belonging. This is a very much a deeper conversation, but just know that with every style, humans are messy. Humans need connection, and humans have choices. The global pipeline is real. Your organizations can go out of the country to get it. So how do you be that consultant that has all of the knowledge? If Griffen or I can help, please let us know. And you're welcome. It says, thank you so much for this. Thank you, Griffen, for
Yeah.
giving me the opportunity. These are big topics, and I hope I've done them diligence within the past half an hour.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. It's been really helpful, really interesting. And I think it's just setting the right tone for us all going into the last quarter to think about how can we create these meaningful connections through the end of the year and then as we kick off the new year as well. So we really appreciate you being here this morning. Thanks everyone for joining, and we look forward to continuing to connect. We'll follow up with some additional resources from Shelley and look forward to